pressure is growing on the UK government to draw up emergency measures to protect households and businesses from high energy costs moving into winter. Household bills have been soaring and are set to rise further, with tomorrow's announcements expected by the energy regulator. They will announce the latest cap on energy prices. Let's bring into the conversation Bloomberg's Lizzie Burden here in London, who's been investigating the UK side of this initially. Lizzie, what are we expecting from Ofgem then tomorrow? Because we've seen this cap rise and rise.
Yes, we're going to see the price cap for the fourth quarter for consumers, and the estimate is that it's going to rise 80%, so that the average energy bill for households is more than
Ed Miliband's energy tool. Are British pubs being asked to warm up their beer to save the planet? Let's be honest, when you think of the Great British Pub, that sacred institution, that bastion of civilization, that place where sense is spoken and nonsense is tolerated in equal measure, the last thing you expect is a government official suggesting your pints should be stored at room temperature overnight in the name of net zero. And yet, here we are. Welcome to British politics in 2025, where the climate agenda has officially walked through the pub door, pulled up a stool, and ordered a lukewarm lager. You're watching British Energy, the channel that cuts through the noise, the spin, and the political theater to bring you what is actually happening in the corridors of power and on the streets of Britain. If you haven't already, please do subscribe. It takes 2 seconds, costs you nothing, and genuinely helps this channel keep delivering the kind of sharp, informed commentary that British political coverage desperately needs. Hit that subscribe button and stay with us, because this one is going to be interesting.
Mary is a working mum of 4 from Stirlingshire. She says almost every penny she earns is spent on trying to keep her house warm.
Just getting up and going to work knowing it's going to go in a metre is so difficult. Anything for £30 to £50 a day. My TV doesn't even work, no tumble dryer, no hot tub at my back garden. That's just my normal boiler.
Scottish Power discovered a problem with Mary's boiler, but she's still waiting for a replacement. She's worried about how she'll cope in the months ahead.
Just dreading the cost going up so much because it's just going to get worse and worse. I've got over £2,000 in rent arrears. It's either feed my meter or pay my rent.
Mary is just one of thousands of households across the country concerned as household budgets face their biggest challenge yet. Tomorrow, the energy price cap will increase, meaning average bills will rise by almost £700, from £1,300 to almost £2,000 a year.
It's happening because the price of wholesale gas on the global market has been really high. The prices started to increase last year as a result of economies opening up around the world after the COVID pandemic.
Now, back to the fridges. Ed Miliband, Labour's energy secretary and the man charged with steering Britain toward net zero, has been championing a government-backed energy-saving tool, one specifically designed to help businesses in the hospitality sector reduce their energy consumption and, crucially, their bills. On the surface, that sounds perfectly reasonable, noble even. Energy prices are climbing, businesses are struggling. If there is a tool that can help a pub in Bromley save £48 a week, then by all accounts, that is worth knowing about. But the moment the words, "turn off the beer fridges overnight," entered the public conversation, the headlines wrote themselves. And quite frankly, so they should have. Because this is Britain, and in Britain, the temperature of one's beer is not merely a preference, it is a cultural position. Let us, however, resist the temptation to simply mock and move on, because beneath the somewhat unfortunate optics of this story, there is a genuinely serious conversation happening, one about energy sovereignty, economic survival, and what it actually means to transition away from fossil fuels in a country where the cost of that transition is landing unevenly and uncomfortably on some of the most beloved businesses in the land. So let us take a breath and walk through this properly. The Department of Energy Security and Net Zero, Mr. Miliband's department, announced earlier this week that hundreds more pubs, restaurants, and hotels will now gain access to this free energy-saving tool. The timing of that announcement was not accidental. It came amid a sharp spike in energy prices driven by the ongoing crisis in the Middle East and the effective blockade of the Strait of Hormuz by Iran. That blockade has sent shockwaves through global oil markets, pushing prices above $100 a barrel, the first time that threshold has been crossed in 4 years. For British businesses already operating on razor-thin margins, that is not a distant geopolitical inconvenience. That is an existential threat. reports suggest the pub sector alone could be facing an additional £170 million per year in energy costs as a direct consequence. £170 million for an industry that was already on its knees following the pandemic, the cost of living crisis, and the slow death of the traditional high street. That figure is not abstract. It represents pubs closing, jobs disappearing, communities losing their focal points. The numbers are stark, and they deserve to be said plainly. Now, the government's response to this, and this is where it gets both interesting and revealing, has been to lean harder into the clean energy agenda rather than step back from it. While announcing the expansion of this business energy tool, ministers simultaneously announced a $53 million support package for vulnerable heating oil customers. And Industry Minister Chris McDonald made the government's position unmistakably clear. The conflict in the Middle East, he said, is a reminder that the only route to genuine energy sovereignty is to end dependence on fossil fuel markets that Britain does not control and transition to homegrown clean power.
That is a coherent argument. A serious one, in fact. If Britain's energy security is perpetually held hostage to events in the Persian Gulf, to decisions made in Riyadh, to tankers navigating the Strait of Hormuz, then the case for accelerating domestic clean energy production is not ideological indulgence. It is strategic necessity. That point deserves acknowledgement, even by those who have reservations about the pace or the method of the transition. But, and this is a meaningful but, there is a substantial gap between the long-term vision and the immediate reality. And it is in that gap that real people and real businesses are currently sitting, watching their energy bills climb and waiting for the cavalry that has not yet arrived. The tool itself, to give credit where it is due, appears to have delivered some genuine results during its 12-month trial. More than 525 establishments are set to benefit from this government-funded advice. 90 hospitality businesses that participated saw their average energy bills fall by almost £2,500. Overnight energy consumption was slashed by up to 66% in some cases. That pub in Bromley reduced its energy usage by 26%, saving £48 a week. Mark Chapman, the chief executive of Zero Carbon Services, the firm delivering the tool with £350,000 of government backing, made the point rather well when he said that saving around £2,000 a year is the equivalent of the profit from selling thousands of pints. That framing is clever because it speaks the language of the hospitality industry rather than the language of Whitehall. It translates the abstract into the tangible. And that kind of translation matters enormously in a policy conversation that too often loses the public precisely because it refuses to speak in human terms. The tool itself provides real-time alerts flagging unnecessary electricity use across what it calls wasted energy hotspots: extraction systems, fridges, ovens, lamps. The fridge suggestion, it should be noted, applies specifically to overnight use, when those fridges are chilling stock that won't be touched until morning. In purely energy efficiency terms, the logic is defensible. In terms of public relations, it is an absolute gift to every political commentator and opposition researcher in Westminster. And speaking of the opposition, where are they in all of this? Because the silence from the conservative benches on the broader energy sovereignty argument is rather telling. The same party that was in government during years of chronic underinvestment in domestic energy infrastructure, the same party that presided over the energy crisis of 2022 and responded with an emergency support package that cost tens of billions, now finds itself in the somewhat awkward position of criticizing a Labour government for trying to solve a problem that deepened significantly on their watch. That is not to absolve the current administration of scrutiny. Scrutiny is what British energy is here for. But context matters. It always does. What Miliband and the government are attempting, and they deserve credit for attempting it, even if the execution remains imperfect, is to build a political and economic narrative that connects the short-term pain of energy prices to the long-term gain of energy independence. The argument is that every pound invested in domestic clean energy today is a pound that reduces Britain's vulnerability to the next Middle East crisis, the next sanctions regime, the next global supply shock. It is an argument with genuine force. The problem is that narrative takes years, sometimes decades, to validate. And British businesses, British households, British pubs, they are not operating on that timeline. They are operating on the timeline of the next energy bill, the next quarterly review, the next decision about whether to stay open or close the doors for good. That tension between the urgent and the strategic, between the immediate and the transformational, is the defining challenge of British energy policy right now. And it will not be resolved by a government tool that suggests turning off the beer fridge. It will be resolved, if it is resolved at all, by serious long-term investment, serious grid infrastructure, and political leaders willing to have the difficult conversation about what the transition truly costs and who is going to bear that cost. That is the conversation this channel will keep having, clearly, honestly, and without apology.
If you find that valuable, then please subscribe to British Energy. Share this with someone who cares about where this country is heading. Every subscriber, every share, every comment genuinely helps this channel grow and keeps the conversation going at the level it deserves. Britain's energy future is being shaped right now in policy papers and parliamentary debates and government announcements that too many people never hear about. That is precisely why this channel exists. Stay informed, stay engaged, and we'll see you in the next one.